Our disability is our greatest strength. It gives us the supervision to see the issues facing humanity from a more inclusive perspective and the grit to fight back against all odds. Welcome to Super Adaptables, the More Than Walking Video podcast discussion. All right, welcome to Super Adaptables, the podcast where people of all abilities gather to discuss pressing issues that affect the disability community and the implications for the world at large. We are your host. I am Corey Pheez C4 complete quadriplegic since 2005.
And I'm Jonathan Sigworth, C7 complete quadriplegic since 2006, both of us hailing from the great state of Connecticut.
And we are recording this on Thursday, the 10th of July, 2025. And in a little bit, we'll be discussing food assistance, lunch table conversations.
And Super Adaptables is made possible in part by a grant from the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation's National Paralysis Resource Center. The information provided and opinions expressed in these podcasts do not necessarily reflect the views of the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation. For more information about the Foundation's National Paralysis Resource Center, as always, visit www.christopherreeve.org. Also, the views expressed on this podcast do not necessarily reflect those of More Than Walking either, but belong to us as individual speakers.
Indeed. So, the school cafeteria. Now, I don't know about you guys, what you paid attention to and whatnot in school, but, some kids carried their lunch boxes filled with pre-made midday meals that the parents sent them to school with, while others lined up and looked forward to what the school was serving for that day. Perhaps it's Salisbury steak, mixed vegetables, a sweet treat, and milk. But for some, it might have been the only meal for the day.
And according to the Food Research and Action Center, during the 2023-2024 school year, approximately 21.1 million children received free or reduced price lunches through the National School Lunch Program. The Congressional Budget Office and the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities estimate that benefits like SNAP will lose $300 billion in funding over the next 10 years, affecting millions of people, especially children. And that's the Supplemental Nutritional and, what is it?
Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program.
There we go. So today we'll be discussing what is your experience with or opinion of food assistance programs, and how do you think these cuts will impact your life?
Indeed. And so, we want to welcome our other Super Adaptables with us today. And so as we call on you, say hello, your name, where you're calling, and from your disability, and briefly, what school lunch did you hate the most, John?
Oh my God, what school? Are we talking like lunch provided in the cafeteria or lunch I'm bringing from home?
Both. Both are on the table, no pun intended.
Okay. The food I hated bringing from home the most were carrots, and like the little baby carrots. I couldn't stand those. School lunch did I hate the most? I don't know. The ziti was my favorite. I never really trusted the mac and cheese that they gave us.
Really?
But that's it, yeah.
The mac and cheese was so good back in the day. So I don't know, like from home, I just felt like I'm about to come to school with like a whole meal. Like if I made it, like if my mom like fried like some chicken, or they made like curry chicken and rice and peas or something like that, I'm coming to school with like the whole meal. And I just didn't want to seem like, I brought my whole dinner table. So oftentimes I did not bring the school home lunch, but they did have something. They had an a la carte menu, and it was beef patty and cocoa breads. And I've grown up in a multi Caribbean cultural type of environment. So everybody typically would get beef patty and cocoa bread. But regular school lunch, I always liked the tacos. Tacos were pretty good.
Oh man, yeah,
in my
that's
opinion.
true.
Yeah, the tacos are good. All right. Well, enough of me. Brandon, how about you?
Hello, I am Brandon. I am 40 years old. I live in Colorado. I'm a C6, C7 complete quad since 2017 from a motor. And like, I don't know, my home, there was never really anything bad other than like if I was given broccoli, but like, there's always somebody like back in the day that was willing to trade up or trade down for some. And then like the school meals, like it depends on when we're talking about too, because like middle school and I don't even remember elementary school meals. Like that's I don't even remember, but like middle school, our pizza was the most horrifying experience. Like it had cheese that wouldn't melt like at all. It was literally like cheese covered like I don't know, cardboard basically. But then when you got into high school, my high school pizza was on point. Like it was so freaking good. So like it just depends on what era we're talking about there.
I see, I see. Guess if it's not delivery, it's DiGiorno, for sure. Sandy.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sandy from South Florida. I am a C3, C4 quadriplegic. My least favorite is probably some of the desserts. Some of the desserts that I couldn't tell what they were, maybe if they were slimy. My favorite was Mexican pizza. My parents never really sent me home, sent me to school with food, but every day my mom had a hot plate of food on the stove when I got home from school. So even if I didn't like what was at school, I always knew that there was going to be food at home.
Nice, nice, nice. Mexican pizza, that's different. That must be a Floridian thing. Like
That sounds
Mexican pizza.
delicious.
I'm like, what? That's like
All
a
the way
super
from
specialty.
elementary school all the way to high school, they always had it. I loved it.
No, no, that's nice. That's nice. Thank you for that. All right. Harley, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, sorry I'm a few minutes late. It is hot and I had to go out in it, so I'm a little overheated at the moment still. My name is Harley. I'm a C7 incomplete quadriplegic from a diving accident that I had on my 19th birthday in 1994. I'm hailing from the great state of Texas, and as for lunches, I never really had a bad lunch. Elementary school, we were allowed to work in the cafeteria, and then we had extra time to eat since we actually helped serve the lunches. Junior high, I actually transferred out to a little itty bitty school. So my aunt's mother was actually the cafeteria lady, and she made homemade food. I'd say a good 90% of the time. So I got homemade lunches in junior high. High school, we were allowed to go off campus. So we would go to like A&W, Pizza Hut, McDonald's. Oh gosh, I can't remember. There was a little mom and pop joint that was like in an old Airstream, and that they turned into a walk-up burger shop. So pretty much everything was, good for me on the experiences and homemade. I grew up on a farm, so mama packed a lot of fresh veggies and fruits, and I'd have PBJs, different types of jellies, homemade a lot of the time. So I can't recall really anything bad.
Wow.
Oh, except for maybe the mashed potatoes, because the school mashed potatoes on Thanksgiving are not the same as homemade.
No, absolutely not. Corey, we should have asked. I think this is a biased question. We're trying to remember positive things here. We should, but we don't have time to go through all the positive foods we've
Oh,
had.
for
But
sure.
man, I'm feeling hungry now. But go ahead, Corey.
No, no, exactly. I mean, I'm thinking, back to the way that we opened up this series in episode one. We talked about Oliver Twist, right? And we talked about the scene where he's hungry and the guys are like grasping for the straws to see who's going to go and ask Mr. Bumble for more. And obviously, we know Oliver was chosen. And one of the backdrops to that story is child labor laws. So as soon as you said you guys was working in the cafeteria for your food, I'm like, man, this is just maybe it's a little bit bigger than food assistance. Maybe we gotta are we returning back to kids working hard for their lunch? But that's different. Like, to hear that, like, you guys had to, serve and whatnot. In some ways, I don't know. That sounds kind of positive. You can learn a lot from that example. So I thought
We
that's neat.
took,
I've never heard of that ever like before.
oh yeah, we all took, each class took a turn for a week to help serve in the cafeteria.
Wow.
And it taught us service, compassion, and I feel it really helped for shaping who I am today. And it was great. It wasn't something for, I guess we didn't really have a choice, but I mean, I loved it. It was great. I mean, the people are our peers were such awesome people. I mean, our janitor acted like a big old dad. He was so protective of us.
Wow.
I mean, I loved my small town.
That's cool. Well, thank you guys for sharing all of those, fun and fond memories. Later on we'll have a food fight. I'm quite sure of it. But, we're going to dive right into it with, again, what this series is about. It's about food assistance programs. So, you SNAP your free or reduced lunches, all of the things that helps make Americans focused in school, especially our young population and children. They talk about, the most important meal of the day is breakfast. And I know we've had past guests on previous podcasts talk about their experience as educators and how when they saw their students who actually came to school and got some food, their ability to focus better and to help improve their day. And so we want to get into, everyone's experience and the changes that recently are occurring with those type of benefits and get your feedback because it's very, very important that people hear the voice of the disability community. So question one, have you ever depended on food assistance? If so, what was your experience like? So we're talking application process time, the social stigmas you may or may not have dealt with, and it does not have to be something that you only dealt with in childhood. If you dealt with it, then we're talking adulthood as well. And what are some of the stereotypes associated with food stamps and other assistive programs?
Well, and I'll answer this first. When I was first married, I lived in public housing with my wife, and she couldn't work yet, and I was working as a substitute teacher, and we were not receiving SNAP or any of those things, but as part of the public housing, every week or every other week, I don't remember what it was. A food kitchen would come in and a food pantry would come in and make a delivery to the facility. And as I mentioned, like we were the only white couple in the whole building. My wife's from Colombia. I grew up in the suburbs, but I was now like financially on my own, and I did not have the resources available to me. I was on Medicaid at that time. And so it was a very humbling experience, an experience I didn't necessarily think I would ever find myself in, rolling into the room where they had brought all the food donations. And so I had to leave my pride at the door and accept that help at that time. And so that was I think a transformative moment for me, experiencing that, but also seeing the quality of the food that was given was not always the best, and so it was a lot of canned goods, nothing fresh. It wasn't extremely good, but it was helpful at that time. But would love to hear your guys' experience. Brandon, what are your thoughts on food assistance, and have you had any experience with that?
Yeah, so I can't really think of a time other than like my 20s where I just didn't care about food or whatever at that time. Plus, I was making really good money. But as I got older with kids, like I've been on food stamps for pretty much as long as I can really remember. You know, like at least to my early 30s, I guess. Um, right now, I'm on food stamps, and luckily, like I don't know what it was up until like February of this month, they actually upped mine by like $100. For like the last 3 years, $110 a month, and I don't know anybody on the face of the planet that can live off $100 a month. You know what I mean? Like, spend gone up, and it's insane. So like right now, I'm getting like 200 something, which still isn't like the greatest because we all here at the house we all pitch in or whatever. So I mean, it helps. You know what I mean? But like I said, for 3 or 4 years, I was only getting $100, which is stupid low.
I grew up in a blended family, so I've been on assistance most of my life. I left my parents' house when I was about 17, 18, and I got pregnant with my first child at 19. So I needed assistance. Now that I'm disabled, I'm on assistance now. It fluctuates up and down depending on how much I make. For a good little minute, they kept, you know, taking away from my food stamps. At one point, like you said, I was like getting like $100 or something, and it was horrible. Couldn't really survive off of it. But even though I am working, I have to be mindful of how much I make so that unfortunately I don't lose my benefits because a lot of the government benefits that I get from Medicare, Medicaid, and some other supplemental programs that I'm in, like the Humana and the long-term care program, can't work over a certain amount or you lose your food stamps. And not too long ago, they gave me a little extra. I make almost 200 now on my food stamps, but it's still not enough because even though I'm single and I live alone and all that stuff, I still have my son that comes. And if I were to put my son on my food stamps and stuff, it would be a whole nother drama. Now that he's 18, he can apply for himself. Good thing he's not at my address, so I don't have to, claim him as a dependent. But it's so complicated. So I don't know.
Yeah, no, that definitely is complicated as far as like, the stereotypes that's associated with food stamps. Oftentimes it can be, well, black people are using that, and there are folks that are taking advantage of the system. Did any of you guys like perspectives change as far as like going from maybe not having to be dependent on that to now having to utilize it?
No, like I said, I've been on it for so long, especially because like before my accident, I had my son full time. So we was pretty much on it anyway, and all my work was under the table, so it was you know we could still claim him and get those food stamp benefits. And then when he ended up leaving the house, yeah, getting switched over to just me, it was pretty easy or whatever. But like I just don't see how they can justify giving somebody that's disabled only $100 a month to live off of money I'm making. Like it costs more than that to feed my dogs. You know what I mean? Like it's crazy.
Well, and Sandy, your example is really makes a point where there's going to be new work requirements for SNAP that's going to kick people off, but then if you work too much, you get kicked off. So there's this insane balancing act that people are forced to deal with, and there's very little flexibility depending on who's living with you, who's not living with you. It is way too complicated.
And at one point, because I'm Haitian, I have to deal with a lot of family members and my that are immigrants, and I see them just coming from wherever, and they're getting like $300, $400, $500 in food stamps. And I've been here in America most of my life. I don't remember ever getting more than $200 in food stamps, which is kind of annoying as well.
Well, it depends on the household size as well, but it's yeah, it's definitely challenging not getting the amount you need.
I've been on food stamps for 34 years. Actually, there was like 2.5 years where I wasn't, and that's because I was married to a soldier. But when he got out of the military, yeah, we had to get on food stamps because then he was civilian and we didn't make enough. But yeah, for the most part, I've been on ever since I got pregnant with my daughter when I was 16. I've been on food stamps ever since. And it's looking back, I was trying to think of the stigmas and stuff, and there are so many families in small communities that are, having a hard time making it, that a lot of us have food stamps. A lot of my crowd, we were just the underdogs. And so we never held judgment against each other. We all knew we were trying to do our best, be our best parents, and, the best parents we could be for our kids. And, being disabled, once my kids were grown and gone, my food stamps, took a cut. My gosh. It went from like 300 something down to 168. And like Brandon was saying, how do they expect you to survive on that? You don't. Right now, I'm making a little over 238. And yeah, I've got two other people in the house that we all combine, with family, work together. But it lasts maybe a week and a half. $238 barely makes a week and a half of food for 3 people.
Wow. I'm thinking too to something that Sandy said, and that is, especially those of us who like are total dependent. I wonder how that works if you have like a 24-hour caregiver, because I know I work with an agency, and one of the things I had to provide for my 24-hour assistants, I had to provide food for them, groceries. And, in their contract, they say meat, starch, meat, starch, vegetables, like in water, right? But sometimes, guys, when I would tell them, hey, I'm about to go to the store, they're like, yeah, can I get canned salmon? Is there shrimp? And I'm like, wait a minute. Like, bruh, like, no. Now, you can get some basic things, for the most part, but I'm wondering how that works, if it covers just everyone in your household, or does it have to be specifically family members?
For me, it's I am the only household. According to the paperwork, we are all separate entities. So I only get 238 solely for me. And I'm supposed to live on that for an entire month when a dozen eggs alone is like $7, $8.
Right. Yeah, I think it's one of these questions that I know we had an economist on one of our podcasts, and which is, we spoke about like the need to like maybe spend more, right? Like our population, if anything, needs food that is nutritional, right? We can't just get the basics at a grocery store and expect to survive. I mean, I can remember just in terms of dieting, I had eliminated meat, which obviously is a great source of protein. And I eliminated it for like maybe 8 months, and I ended up having skin breakdown, right? Because I didn't supplement it with something else that was nutritional. And once I start putting meat back into my diet, it's like then the pressure ulcer wound up healing. But it says a lot to, I wonder, with the creators of like just the system, how they prioritize that money. And one thing that we learned in the first podcast was, it was because of the coming out of the Great Depression under FDR is when, food stamps started. It wasn't a federal program as of yet that came later on down the road, but it happened in 1939, and the government, picks, much like they do now with food stamps, right? As you guys can attest to, there's only certain foods that they're going to cover, right? And so it obviously, from you guys' experience, is just really not sufficient enough to be able to make sure that you're fed, throughout a given time period.
Well, yeah, I mean, one of the things we talked about, Corey, was this great documentary, which you should all see. That was which came out what in 1968.
Yeah,
Um,
1968.
yeah, so before SNAP was restarted, and you know, they talk about how some of these local programs, they would give whatever was left over, like the harvest or whatever was in excess. I forget what they called it. But if they had excess lard, if they had excess,
Yeah, that's
uh,
surplus.
yeah, any of these surplus commodities, they would just dump them into food pantries. So basically, the poor were just given lard and corn and um, any of these products which could help them survive, but was just terrible for you. And while SNAP does like you can get vegetables with SNAP, right? Like they don't put a limit on what you can get in terms of like good food. Like it's eligible, like I believe. But you just don't have like you don't get enough SNAP to pay for it if it's good food. Is that correct? Or is there like good for you like nutritional food that SNAP does not cover
So
with
at
from your
least
experience, guys?
Colorado, you can pretty much get whatever you want as long as it's not like you can't get foods like you can't get like a rotisserie chicken from King Supers or whatever. Like if it's already hot, and then like a lot of them now doesn't cover like Monster Energy drinks or like stuff like that. Like they put limitations on that, but generally speaking, in Colorado, you can pretty much get what you want.
So you said, hold on, just before you move on, John, you said if it's already cooked, you
You
can't
can't.
get it. Isn't that a bit, I don't know, problematic? Like if you like,
You have to work for your food. You got to cook that whole chick.
right? I'm like, I can't cook anymore,
You can get
right? Like,
you can get a freezer pizza, whatever you want. But if you go to like 7-Eleven and they have like them like hot by the slice, you can't buy it by the slice because it's already pre-made. It's already hot. Like I don't understand it, but whatever.
yeah, that one's a little bit difficult. And the reason why I'm saying that is because, you know, coming out of the Great Depression gave rise to like processed foods, right? And I mean, we're talking about canned foods and candies and anything that could be like quickly made and multiplied largely over time. But when I think about just people with disabilities who may not, you could have an intellectual disability and you have trouble understanding directions in cooking and stuff, and maybe you find it easier to have something pre-made for you. It's taken away that leaves. It sounds like it would leave people at a disadvantage who depend on those food assistance benefits.
You can actually get anything pre-made as long as it's not hot.
In Texas, or just you talking about?
Well, in Washington, I know in Washington State, I'd go to the deli and buy sushi, or I'd buy, homemade potato salad and stuff because it's cold. But as long as the stuff is cold, you can get it. It's anything hot, and that was the difference for pre-made. So anything pre-made you can get as long as it's a cold pre-made.
Wow, that is so infuriating because like the go-to like a meal for like several people if you do not have time, like a rotisserie chicken, like what is more classic solution that is like not terrible for you, like puts the main entree on the table, it's efficient. That doesn't make any sense. I mean, I understand like they don't want you to get food that spoils or whatnot, but that's insane. That's insane. People need to, yeah, that's insane. Rotisserie chicken, man. So let's kind of dive into the cuts then. So do you guys agree with the types of cuts being made to SNAP and other programs? Do you know about them? And in your opinion, do you think these cuts eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse? Let's just kind of start with that. And Corey, what are your thoughts? First of all.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about, a 10-year time period where people are going to be ineligible for certain things that food stamps would help them out so much. And just because we don't know what it's going to be like in 10 years, I try to talk to my kids all the time about being fiscally responsible and stuff. But, 10 years from now, like they're going to be young adults starting off. And even if they're able to work, it doesn't guarantee that they're going to be able to have a job and work consistently enough where they can bring in enough money to support themselves. So what happens because I know that like the work requirements are changing. And, there's this idea planted in many people's minds that, the waste, fraud, and abuse is because there's just a bunch of people just sitting around and they're not working and they're just kind of loafing. When most of the people who are on SNAP benefits, who are on things like Medicaid, they are working, they just don't earn enough. And so when my kids are of that age in their early 20s, I know for me, even being in the military, I did not earn a lot. Like my paycheck might have been $1,200 per month, but you start coupling that with auto insurance, car payment, a cell phone bill, it was cut in half. The only backbone that I had for support, and I'm quite sure Sandy could talk about it in her time service, is that you're going to get paid on the 1st and the 15th, albeit you hope that there's no government shutdown. And in the Navy, they usually serve food at a certain time. It's not always available, but they do have breakfast. They do serve lunch. They do have something on my ship. They call it mid-rats. So it's after dinner. So it's like around 10 or so that you're able to still be able to eat. But I'm thinking more about the future going forward. So that's a big concern to me. I don't know if it's going to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse when you currently, I haven't heard like numbers on how many people are like being fraudulent with SNAP benefits. But how,
Well,
go ahead.
Well, talking about the numbers, let me just kind of quickly summarize. So, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which is now law, so we can talk about it in specifics, includes $186 billion in funding cuts in the next 10 years. And it incurs stricter worker requirements. So able-bodied SNAP recipients aged 18 to 64, that's up from 18 to 54, must now complete at least 80 hours a month of work, job training, education, or volunteer activity, or prove that they're looking for work. Otherwise, this would likely disqualify them if they don't have dependents. And then states have to share in error-related costs. Beginning around 2028, any state with a SNAP payment error rate exceeds 6% must cover up to 15% of their program costs. And there's a reduced cost of living adjustment. So updates to the Thrifty Food Plan, which kind of determines, as we've been talking about, that $100 a month you get, or what have you. That is not adjusted as sufficiently as it relates to inflation and other things and some complicated rule calculations. So this potentially impacts 3.2 million people, potentially, among other impacts. A local strain on food banks, etc.
The whole program needs to be reformed in general. These DCF, SNAP, and all them programs, those government programs are heavily they misinform the people properly. They don't tell you what you qualify for, what's available to you, really. and how to really navigate through the program. And then the SNAP programs with all these cuts, I'm not familiar with what's really going on, but there needs to be reform in how the money is distributed because it's not completely even. Like some people who are able-bodied and are getting food stamps is more than the person who is disabled who is sitting home and is needs more food. When you're disabled, you need to be fueled up on a regular basis. Not to say that we're more needy than an able-bodied person, but I mean we're home more. Anyways, there's so much to it. I feel like the best way for them to update the system is to really get people out there to investigate who's really getting the care and maybe even have like certain nutritional programs or nutritionists that go and talk to people on how to financially be able to use these funds appropriately because I don't think the people that really need it are receiving it and the people that don't really need it are the ones that are able to navigate through the system to get it.
Well, I mean, what I'm hearing, Sandy, is you're saying people like us, people like you, those of us with disabilities who really need it, we're not getting it. We're not getting what we need. And one of the reasons is that everyone else who is getting it instead of us. And is that what I'm hearing?
Sometimes I feel like that. I'm not fully aware of what's really going on, but because I live in the hood and I see people selling food stamps and doing all these fraudulent things with the funds that they get, it's like it's kind of annoying. It's like
Yeah.
like some of these people with multiple kids. Let's say I know this lady, she works 2 jobs, she gets food stamps, she has 3 kids, so she gets a nice amount of money. So even though she may be in a crunch financially, she still sells her food stamps so she can get the money. I'm sure she keeps her house full of food because she has 3 kids and she probably needs it, but there's a distribution error there. If she has 2 jobs and she's making over a certain amount of money where she needs to sell her food stamps, I don't know, just feels weird. Just doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up.
No, but if you have, what I want us to think about, and it's really easy for us to, I think, to blame other people who are getting food stamps. But the reason why these cuts are happening, it's not to pay for someone else. It's not for more disabled people to get more money in their SNAP benefits, right? Like, who are we to judge if one SNAP benefit person really deserves it or not? Right? The fact of the matter is that the whole system is being cut, and it's not to fund more medical services. It's not to fund more things for people with disabilities. It is to pay for other tax cuts and things for people who are doing very well, and for big businesses and those types of things. So when we're talking about when the system needs to be reformed, I think it's okay for us to say we need more support, but I'm not. I think it's dangerous to point at other people who are also needy.
I'm just saying because the system is not fully regulated properly, it doesn't matter how much money you pour into it or how much money you cut out of it. If it's not distributed properly, it's not going to be of use. No matter how much money they take out or put into the system, if the system is not functioning properly for those who need it the most, it really doesn't matter. It sucks that they're cutting it and distributing it somewhere else because I'm a little bit more conservative. I feel like people should work and not depend on the government. We should have our own thing going on and stuff like that. But when they do help, they should make sure that they're helping the people that actually need it.
You're absolutely right. And Corey and I were talking last week, also like these SNAP programs, like they're kind of a band-aid in a sense that what is the ultimate solution where you no longer need SNAP? Why can't we aim to get to that point where there are enough jobs where people can afford to pay for their groceries, or where everyone can get access to those fresh vegetables in the local grocery store, and can get all the nutrients that they need. So you're absolutely right. It's the system needs to be redone, no matter how much money you put into it.
As a humanitarian, my mindset is like everybody deserves to be taken care of. So on a more democratic point of view, I feel like if we all had like a universal set thing that says everybody needs food, everybody needs a place to stay, everybody needs all the things, there's certain necessities every single person needs on a universal status, because there's a surplus everywhere. They keep saying there's not enough, but it's more than enough. So I feel like it should, at a basic level, everybody should have like a basic amount of food, a basic place to stay. Because like in Florida, like when I go to the beach, I see all these massive buildings, these housing buildings empty. And there's so much, close to downtown, there's so many homeless people. And I'm like, but yet all these buildings are empty. And there's so many thousands of for rent signs. And it's just crazy how people could be homeless, people could be hungry. There's buildings full of food, throwing it away every single day. I don't know, just this world.
And there's a new high-rise luxury apartment building that just opened up looking for occupants.
Exactly. It just all doesn't make sense. And then they put a line for every single person. Well, it's good that we have lines of people trying to get assistance or whatever, but I feel like the discrepancy is weird. How can there be billionaires in the world when there's hungry people right here in our backyard? I just don't understand.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I want to get Harley in to weigh in on this real quick. Just what's your thoughts on question 2, Harley?
I think it's stupid for cutting things because, I mean, as for fraud, yeah, I know there's fraud. A friend of my father's, he really had a wake-up call. He came across some people in a beautiful van, and this is back in the 90s when I first had my accident and stuff, shortly after. And, people were dirty, smelly, and he's like, okay, they don't look like the type to be rolling around in a $70,000 van. And he asked him, he's like, if you don't mind me asking, what type of work do you do? He's like, oh, I don't work. I collect Social Security. He's like, really? And you can do this? He's like, yeah, I've never worked a day in my life in the US, but I come here and I get Social Security. And right then and there, he was like, oh my goodness, here's a girl that just had an accident. She's fighting for every penny. Here's somebody that just walks into the US and it's like, here, have it all. And so, it's, I don't know how many other people are greeted like that. I hear a lot, but what you hear is not always true. I read a lot, but it's not always true. Like right now, when we were talking, I pulled up minimum wage in the state of Texas for 2025 is $7.25 an hour. And that has not been updated since 2009. So since 2009, the minimum wage here in Texas has been $7.25, which is the same as the federal minimum wage.
And we wonder why we have to be on Medicaid and we have to be on SNAPs and we're working full time. That's why.
More than what they tell you, they'll take your benefits away.
Yeah, we have a 3-generation household. And with all 3 incomes, we can barely pay our bills. I mean, we are living paycheck to paycheck. Right now, our fridge is empty. And we're trying to debate which bill do we pay only partially so we can get food. 3 incomes. That is wrong.
Wow. That is speaking volumes. Brandon, I want you to jump in real quick because we are press for time a little bit.
I've seen so many people, time and time again. Like, I can't say that I was above it either, because when I was working under the table for years, like, I could pretty much afford some of my own groceries, but I skated under because of a technicality and was able to get food stamps for my kids, which severely helped because bills were bills and bills need to get paid. So I'm all about them at least going through with like a fine tooth comb and picking out the ones that don't need to be on it. I'm sorry, if you are able bodied and you can go to work, get your ass to work, you lazy bastards. That's where I'm at. Just, I'm hoping that once it goes through with the fine tooth comb, that yes, people like us can get a little bit more on our benefits. You know what I mean? Hey, we ended up with $6 billion extra dollars. Let's give it out. You know what I mean? If we stop sending billions and billions and billions of dollars to other countries, for God's sake, no, use that stuff here at home and let's fix our own backyard before we worry about the neighbor's lawn. You know what I mean? Like, absolutely not. And like Harley said too, with all of the benefits that they're giving, like in California, all of these hundreds and thousands of illegal immigrants that are able to get on these government food stamps programs, like, no, I'm sorry, you should have to be a recognized citizen of this country to enjoy federal assistance. Like, there's so many people like we're all talking about right now where we're trying to survive off of $110 a month for food stamps, but
I
trying to
understand
sound.
where you're coming from. I worked in this country for 14 years before I got paralyzed. I wasn't on food stamps for about 14 years. All that time I was working. And I feel like I put enough taxes into the system for me to get Social Security, for me to get Medicare, for me to get SNAPs. I worked and I even served in my country. So for someone who hasn't even been here long enough to be getting our tax money and our services, I want to be benevolent to the other, to other people. But if we're not able to manage our own home, how are we extending our arms to other people when we have our own veterans or our own citizens that are not properly taken care of? Just doesn't make sense.
I mean, those are really, really good points. And I want maybe to reflect on why these cuts are happening. And as you guys are saying, we need to focus on the people who are in need at home. But what is the mindset of a politician, or what is the mindset of a leader of a country, or the people in charge who make the kinds of decisions to cut programs like SNAP, right? Let's talk about international aid, right? So Doge and the federal government have now completely shut down USAID. And major studies project that over 14 million additional deaths will occur globally by 2030, including 4.5 million deaths among children under age 5 because of those cuts. All right. So the same type of people who agree to that kind of cutting off international aid, right? Those are the same people who are going to cut and potentially kick off 3 million people off of SNAP. Those are the same people who are making cuts to Medicaid. And conversely, the same groups that are advocating out there for increased benefits, increased Medicaid coverage, increased SNAP benefits, increased those things. Those are the same groups of people who are promoting for organizations like USAID, who are promoting international aid for children and people in need. So I hear what you guys are saying. Like, we can't be spending our money out there. We need to be spending it at home. But what's actually happening is it's the mindset, right? It's what are your priorities? If you have a government that prioritizes health and well-being of your migrant children, even if they are illegal immigrants, like, children deserve food and children deserve healthcare. Those are going to be the same people that prioritize support for people with disabilities and support who need food stamps. So it's important to keep that in mind, I think, too.
Last question. Food assistance can help provide financial relief when purchasing groceries, as we spoke about. And as someone with disabilities and possibly on a fixed income, how do you budget for groceries? And now that the One Big Beautiful Bill is law, if you depend on food assistance, how are you preparing for any additional changes?
If I my like I honestly have no idea what I do, even with what I have right now. Yes, I could always try and budget some more extra things, and I could probably scrape by. So luckily, I do have my family that's able to help me, and I don't know. I'm kind of hoping that during these cuts that I'm one of the people that get to keep mine. If not, it's just one of those things that you cross the bridge as it's burning kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like, I have absolutely no idea. Could I possibly budget an extra $150? Yeah, probably. I mean, I'd skimp somewhere on other things, obviously, but I mean, that's kind of one of those things that you don't know if you can swim until you're already thrown in the deep end.
As spiritually as dependent as I am on the government and other people, I just keep on my faith. God said He will provide, so I try my hardest not to think too far ahead for certain things. It sucks that you do have to prepare for these types of things. That's the reason why, even as a disabled person, I work online. I'm a virtual assistant. I have, my different foundations that I'm affiliated with, and I have to put myself out there, and every little extra money that I get, I put it in a fund to help my son. Thank God I have a child who one day wants to help me in the future. So I kind of put my hope into him a little bit. Not completely, but because I always have my faith in God, knowing that He will always be there for me. But this is some really funny times right now. Things are going up and down. 6 months ago, they took like $80 off of my food stamps. Just last week, they gave me back up, about $60 back. So it's just been up and down with these people. So all I can say is, thank God I have God, because if you keep looking around all the chaotic things that's going on with our finances, the government, the weather, with all these different things, it kind of makes you feel a little overwhelmed. But if you have a spiritual standing, I feel like internally you'll be able to face everything.
Definitely good word of advice, Harley.
If we had to come up, just an example with the number that Brandon threw out there, 150. I don't know where we're going to find even 150 at. I mean, oh my gosh. Right now I live on top ramen with maybe peas and cheese. That's one meal. We buy a case of ramen every month because that is a case of, that is 24 meals. So trying to eat healthy, not on these kinds of budgets. It's stupid. It's ridiculous. I try to eat as healthy as I can, but like I said, I live on top ramen with a veggie and maybe cheese. A lot of times it's just top ramen by itself, and that's a meal. For what I remember one time where the food stamps ran out. So for 2 days, my children had to eat toast and whatever on it, whatever, butter, cinnamon, sugar. My children ate toast 3 meals a day for 2 days. I didn't eat anything because the food stamps ran out, but I wanted to make sure my kids ate. So, I mean, with these cuts and stuff, yeah, I'm nervous, but I'm a survivor. I mean, I've gone hungry before. I'll go hungry again if that's what it takes to survive. It's all about survival. And there's been, I've been through some hard things and things I won't talk about that I've had to do to survive. But, come hell or high water, I'll find a way.
The law is not just going to affect people who are on SNAP, but those who are just above the eligibility limits, as Sandy referred to, people who are seniors with fixed income. If you live in a rural area where there's fewer stores, prices are going to go up for all of us. And if inflation is a real issue for you, it's going to impact you. So I think a really important resource for people to know about is to stay in touch if you are on SNAP or if you're hovering around those eligibility limits that you think you might need SNAP, to really stay in touch with your Center for Independent Living, to make sure that they can help navigate your benefits with you, and to give some assistance, especially if you're working or interested in working. And Spinalpedia, if you go to spinalpedia.com and request peer mentoring, we can also help with navigating the system around this moving forward, if that's a concern. But yeah, man, I think it's really important overall is just to remember that it doesn't matter if you're on SNAP, if you're not on SNAP, these issues are going to affect us either way. And this is something that we should care about, right? As Sandy was saying, like, we all deserve to have food. We all deserve to have a place to stay. These should be human rights. These should not be things that, like, oh, well, if, as we saw in the documentary, Corey, one councilman, and unfortunately it was Texas, but said, well, if the father ain't working, the kids aren't going to eat. That's their problem. That's not something that the taxpayer should pay for. And I don't know, maybe right to food, right to shelter, right to healthcare, like access to these things. These are human rights, that we should really support, and fight for each other, and not fight against each other, to get access to those rights.
No, you're right. I mean, I think we touched on a lot of things that are true, but they're also the reason why, no one man can fix all of this, as far as from a governmental standpoint. Sandy's right. I have as well encountered individuals who are utilizing the system in a illegal fashion, but their intent is because they just don't have enough. So even with the exchange of food stamps for cash, it's because of the limitations that food stamps are relegated to in the first place. And so therefore the cash is what allows you to go beyond that. And, there are, some states have something called restaurant meals program that allow, SNAP recipients, people who are elderly, disabled, homeless, or even spouses of eligible individuals to purchase prepared meals. And obviously those restaurants have to be involved in it, but that's part of the complexity and the hoops that people who are in need are jumping through in order to get more out of their benefits, right? So, I know for me, as a family of four, and my wife stays at home, she's a stay-at-home mom, $110. I mean, granted, the government's supposed to give you more based off of your eligibility requirements. That just would not cut it for us. It would not. And we would find it very hard to thrive. But to Harley's point, you shouldn't have to just subject yourself to being a survivor, right? This is what they did during the Great Depression. They were surviving. And as John put it, what are these things even? Why are these cuts even being made? They are to help the working upper middle class individuals and people who receive, in the upper echelons, tax cuts during the Great Depression, such as what you guys are experiencing now. Farmers had such a surplus of foods that the food was going to waste, though they knew people all across the country were hungry. This is why the Dust Bowl happened, because no one was there to till these crops. They had no ability to distribute. So at the end of the line, it all ends up coming down to money. And that's what we need to kind of erase out of our minds when it comes down to food assistance. There is enough. There's more than enough. I mean, if you're a multi-millionaire,
we do not need to be fighting against ourselves. We do not, in order to solve this problem. There is no money going out to international countries right now. There is no money going to illegal immigrants in many states right now. And yet the benefits are being cut. Where is that money going? That's what we need to pay attention to. And keep that in mind that we are not each other's enemy and that we need to, I don't know, find the solution because, as Corey's saying, there is enough.
Yeah. And I would also just add to that statement that, even if you were to eliminate the amount of money that gets sent to overseas and assisting other countries, a lot of economists say that would drive up costs here in America itself because you're no longer having this exchange trade would dwindle, and that would cause some economic hardships on us as well. It's not to say that a part of that isn't correct, but I know we think in our kind of own areas and bubbles. Yeah, it makes sense, man. Like if I'm not paying so much over here, therefore I can go reallocate those funds. Well, we're in a situation where funds are being reallocated and it's being used to give tax breaks to individuals who don't necessarily need as much of a break as those of us who are disabled, elderly, and low income earners. But this has been a super duper dope conversation and definitely one that won't be left only here. So thank you guys for participating in tonight's More Than Walking video podcast discussion.
Well, and stay tuned in and sign up for the More Than Walking newsletter at morethanwalking.com to learn about the topic we will cover next and how you can participate. Also, like, comment, and subscribe to our More Than Walking YouTube channel to watch each podcast and click that notification bell so you are alerted when new episodes drop. Follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. Just search for More Than Walking or Super Adaptables.
And until then, remain encouraged, stay hopeful, and above all else,
Keep adapting.